Welcome to Your Destiny is Calling, Time to Meet Your Genius. It's a pretty bold title, we know. And we feel that by the end of our time together in these 90 minutes, you'll have a better sense of why we chose the boldness that we did. If it were just her and I, like together in a room going like, hey, what should we call this thing? We would have never called it this. But the thing about being tapped and the thing about being asked to bring something forth is a lot of times you don't have any choice in it. And that's where the destiny part comes in. And in fact, what's been at times very confusing and now we are relaxing much more into is the reality that when you align with your destiny, then you have access to your free will. And life is really challenging when your destiny is calling and you just keep hanging up the phone. You're like, wrong number. You block spirit, you block the universe. You're like, get that off my phone. And
or text them back, can't right now.
Yeah, busy. I'm working on my free will. Call me later. And so when you can relax into your destiny, then magic starts to happen. And so we're going to talk about that magic, and we're also going to talk about how everyone on this call and everyone potentially, if they choose on this planet, has the ability to be a living, breathing genius. However, we have to redefine that, and so we're going to be doing that tonight as well.
The first question I ask is if someone is really willing to change, because this work is no joke. When I get up off that table, I am in such an altered state, very functionally, and it feels amazing. I feel really calm and really peaceful, really connected with myself, with my breath. And the thing I always notice first and foremost is like there's nothing wrong. Like everything that I was stressing about and worrying about, gone, totally gone. And I'm connected with my body, I'm breathing more expansively. This work has helped me understand on such a more refined level how to release energy that I'm holding that is not serving my highest good, and specifically how to use my body to do it, how to stretch and how to move and how to yawn. And underneath all that, really, it's like being able to listen with much more refined sense of listening to what it is my body needs in that moment.
So above and beyond Tristan being an amazing human being and phenomenal coach whose life is like skyrocketing with what he's doing, we worked with him here in Asheville, and he unfolded a bunch of stuff and moved to LA. He, in 60 seconds, describes beautifully the benefits of what it is that we're going to be sharing with you in terms of the genius. So we wanted to start with that.
And by the way, what is genius? I'm sure when we say that, you think of some things. And we're going to go ahead and start there with like, what have we been told genius is? What do they say genius is?
Yeah. And like, what do you think of when you think of the word genius?
Permit me to introduce myself. My name is Coyote. Wile E. Coyote. Genius.
Have brain, eh? Hey, that must be very handy at times.
Yes, it is handy at times, Bugs. This was my first foray into genius. I was obsessed with Bugs Bunny and Wile E. Coyote and their tumultuous relationship. And especially being named Brian, the amount of times that people write me, and instead of writing B-R-I-A-N, they write B-R-A-I-N. And the time that I started to tune into the definition of genius that we're going to be sharing with you tonight, which comes from an indigenous culture in West Africa, I remembered this clip and I was like, oh my God, life, when you tune into your genius, starts to show you the spiritual breadcrumbs that lead you along your path to that. You start to retrospectively see the perfection in every moment. And so when I was first sharing genius, I remember this clip and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to show the Bugs clip.
And we looked up the definition of genius for you. And we're going to read the first two that we found, the first two definitions. The first one is the exceptional intellectual or creative power or other natural ability. And the second is a person who is exceptionally intelligent or creative, either generally or in some particular respect.
So, like, when I see this definition, I don't immediately think, yeah, Brian Thomas Lumb,
Me.
genius. Like, definitely, exceptional. However, what if we looked at a different way of looking at genius?
Yeah.
But before we do that...
We're going to talk about who they say is genius and who might be going through your head right now. And it's really important to mention what we were told, because there's more to the story, and we want to acknowledge what we've been told so that we can grow beyond that.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to dismantle what we've been told in order for what's real to emerge.
Right.
So,
Leonardo da Vinci, he's a classic.
genius.
For once you have tasted flight, you will walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward. For there you have been, and there you will long to return.
And if you've ever had a moment in your life where you had this like massive expansion of like awareness, of consciousness, and yes, taking drugs counts, you know exactly what Leonardo is talking about here. Once you've had that expansion, you can never see life the same.
And Albert Einstein, who said, "It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity."
And what we're so excited about this particular quote is we're going to be sharing with you tonight how you can start to bring your human technology beyond the technology. Technology is important, but the human technology is really where the game is at.
That's what we're going to talk about here. Prince. A strong spirit transcends rules.
And he's giving you clues. So Prince was certainly connected to a source beyond himself. And because of that deep connection with spirit, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, he was easily able to transcend rules and create a musical legacy from which people are still following and trying to even approximate.
Elon Musk. I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary.
So Elon's literally outright inviting us. He's like, here's your invitation. I know you think that I'm Elon Musk, so therefore X, Y, and Z. And he's saying like, and so can you. And I believe someone else said that too. Not saying that 1 = 1, but I think you get what I'm saying.
Oprah said, "You are not your circumstances. You are your possibilities. If you know that, you can do anything."
And what's great about this quote, and what's also great about Oprah, is she's been very public about her trauma being her fuel for who she became. And we're going to be going into deep dive on that today.
So, we've been through it now. This is what
Cross
you've been
us
told
off.
is genius. And these people, yes, they are genius. And what we're saying is there's more.
Right.
There's more to the story.
The first two definitions are the result of the definition that we're going to be talking about. So let's look at that definition.
The definition we're using from here forward when we talk about genius is the guardian spirit associated with a person, place, or institution. This is a piece of our definition. And its origin is from late Middle English, from Latin, the attendant spirit present from one's birth, innate ability, or inclination.
And what's super cool about this origin of the English word genius is it lines up with indigenous definition of genius. Indigenous communities have talked about genius in their own way for thousands of years. And we're going to be looking at that in combination with this definition when we're describing what genius means in this context.
Yes, and the way we are using it is talking about something that everyone has.
Yes.
Talking about something that you have.
Welcome to Earth, a trauma-based learning center. So I've said this a number of times over the last few years, and it's usually met with mixed responses. Usually there's kind of like a cringing in the room of like, oh God, no, please don't say that. And then there's usually some kind of like, oh yeah, actually, if I think about it, that's actually kind of true. And then usually some laughter after said cringing and reflection. And then there's kind of like a relaxing into of like, oh my God, wait a minute. If I could actually just realize that like if this were a particular university And this university was all about learning in the physical form. And part of that learning including having kind of horrible, hard, really painful things happen to you such that you could compress your system and push a bunch of energy and matter together as like a physical bookmark to then later in that contracted state then expand explosively and through that grow to the point where you could graduate and not need trauma and pain to learn anymore. Then you kind of go, okay, well, wait a minute, that kind of explains, let's see, my life up until now. And it also explains my desire to be a conscious, free will human being that has choice in the matter and doesn't have to learn through pain. And first, we have to acknowledge that that's kind of where we're at. So, welcome to Earth. And we're going to talk about the anatomy of trauma 101. Here's what happens. We have all this information that comes at us. Some of it's physical, okay? Some of it's chemical. Some of it's electromagnetic. We didn't used to have that, and we do now, and it's growing day by day. So we definitely want to add that to the list because it is a thing. We have emotional, mental, and spiritual. All of these realms of experiencing, if too much, becomes trauma. So trauma is basically an experience beyond one's capacity to process. And think about it. One person could be on a roller coaster sitting next to someone else. They get off the roller coaster. One person feels terrified. They throw up on themselves. The other one's like screaming like mad. Is like, I want to do it again. You know, someone eats a piece of bread and they're like, wow, I feel great and my belly feels full and that was super yummy. Someone else like poops their pants because they have, you know, they're gluten intolerant. Same experience, but one person's reality of experiencing that experience fully compared to another person is different. Mm-hmm. So if you can't fully experience it, it becomes trauma, which is ultimately energy and information. And if you think about the word inform, you're taking energy and you're starting to compress it and bring it into form. So we have energy and matter as the two ingredients of creation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And so the energy and information, physically, chemically, electromagnetically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, if it's beyond one's ability to process, it is trauma. Where does it go? In the body. So our body compresses, distorts, and pretty much everyone these days, thank God, we don't have to like go through this entire story, has heard of fight, flight, freeze. And we can even add fawn, and there's probably a few other F's that have added to the mix there. But the bottom line is that when we go into a traumatic state, we're basically not able to process the moment, and our body goes into this fight, flight, freeze, which essentially is storing information and energy. That creates tissue tension, or what we would call a wound. And if you look at the spelling of wound and wound, it's the same spelling with a different pronunciation. So one wound is trauma, the other wound is winding, which describes what is literally happening in the body. We're winding up that tension to basically house the energy and information.
Tension in the spinal cord, it winds, and which is connected to all the connective tissue in your body. And we're going to get into like how the tissues respond to this.
So this is what we look at when we're looking at someone and their body and basically looking at the history and their anatomy and what has happened. What's processed doesn't show up as tension. We don't even know. But what stays as tension, we know is trauma. So when vertebrae misalign, it's basically earth frequencies that we couldn't fully process. Mm-hmm. When muscular distortion happens, it's basically water frequencies that store in the musculature. Mm-hmm.
And muscular distortion is either a muscle that isn't turned on, it's weak, or it's spasming, it won't turn off. So either one of those.
So it's either too much or too little. Then fire frequencies, and we'll talk about frequencies a little bit later, is basically neural tension, tension through the spinal cord, and also decreased energy. Or we have too much energy and we're not utilizing it effectively. We can also have that winding show up in our connective tissue, our fascia, our neural tension, again, Regional spinal and skeletal distortion shows up as the mineral element.
And so that's when, instead of just like one spot on
Yeah.
the body, it's like an area
Yes.
of the body that's like, oh, it's doing this weird thing.
So
that's mineral.
Exactly. So earth would be like one vertebra over another, whereas minerals like a bunch of vertebra all coming together to distort. With air, we have decreased respiration, so decreased breath, and we also have neural tension. So you'll see that a number of these create tension along the spinal cord. Nature creates global tension. It's like taking every single one of these: vertebral misalignment, muscular distortion, neural tension, connective fascial, and regional spinal and skeletal distortion, plus decreased respiration, and you put all those together and basically you have the nature element. So essentially, we can look at your body and all of these layers, and we know precisely which element and which frequency you have not been able to process. And as we'll talk about soon, every element is basically in your body and in fact creates everything in our reality. And this is indigenous wisdom.
Yes. And so the next thing we're going to go through is, how do you experience it as a person? Like, how do we experience this as people when these frequencies are experiencing wound, when they're experiencing tension? So earth feels like a lack of safety. You'll experience scarcity. So whatever is happening in your life, doesn't matter how many fish you have, you will feel like you don't have enough.
Right.
And body pain as well. Water is like emotional overwhelm, or the opposite of that too can be like, I feel nothing. And relationship challenges, disharmony.
Yep.
Yeah. Fire is like low energy, inflammation, lack of focus, and you're like culturally controlled.
You'll
like,
look at the media and believe everything's true that comes
or like
across.
a victim to the fashion trends,
Yep.
a victim to whatever trend comes along. You won't be able to find yourself in spirit inside of whatever's happening around you. Yeah. Mineral is limiting beliefs and stories, confusion, poor posture, and a lack of purpose, like forgetting who you really are. Air is anxiety. I like to describe air as like, when air is energized, it feels like you're flying.
And spacious.
And when air is not energized, feels like you're falling. Same experience, right? Like same zip line. And also you'll experience problems with time, problems with experiencing time, not enough time.
Yeah, Wile E. Coyote had a lot of stuff with air and earth. He was always like falling and crashing down to the ground.
And nature is a lack of trust and faith. Not experiencing the synchronicities that you know you can, and just not able to trust the path, trust your path.
Now, here's the problem. If you've ever wondered what the problem is, we're going to tell you it's real simple. Your problem is that you think your problem is the problem. That's not the problem. But here's how it looks. You think that whatever symptom that you have, or your concern, or your diagnosis, or your disease, or your pain, or your crappy relationship, or the job that you're in that you don't like, or the economy, or the new strain of whatever virus that's flying through Walmart or wherever it is that you are, and you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, you think that's the problem. And you think that's the reason why you aren't living a joyful, free, expressive life. But the problem is that the problem is not your problem. It's not. So we're going to talk about a few more things, and then we'll let you know what the problem actually is.
We also didn't exactly introduce ourselves. I'm Chelsea Rae Verslues, and
I'm Brian Thomas Lumb.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about us.
Yeah.
So
Take it away.
we want you to know that when we're talking about transforming trauma into gifts, into magic, in transformation, that we just want to share a few things with you about ourselves first. My entrance in the world was on September 1st in 1989, and it was rushed and non-consensual. They pulled me out a week early by my head, cesarean, and then fed me formula, which I projectile vomited for the first year of my life. And the doctor said that was normal. So I was pretty much malnourished for the first year of my life. And that, as many can probably relate, a good start is nice to have. And luckily, the grace had me in a wonderful environment. I grew up in mid-Missouri on a farm with a wonderful, vibrant, huge family. And most of my time, because we lived in such a rural place, was spent outside on our land with my imaginary friends, frolicking in the trees with nature. And I learned so much. The first chapter of my life was informed by nature. And as I grew, as I continued, I always used my body as art. I learned I was a figure skater. and I learned all kinds of art, like figure skating, cheerleading, gymnastics, and was always using my body to express. And my family, by the way, was a very large German family of farmers, and they weren't very expressive. As you might imagine.
There wasn't any time to be expressive.
There wasn't any time, and it wasn't the easiest life. I learned a lot from them, like a lot. And, they had many, many tragedies happen in my family, and it was kind of one thing after another with struggles to survive. And so I was handed, those genes, and I decided to make art because that was the best way that I knew how. And I wasn't very good at feeling, because really, I don't think anyone around me was very good at feeling. And I needed such intensity to be able to feel the world around me that I was dropped from the top of a pyramid and fractured my ankle, needing 2 screws, kind of a really rare fracture of the tibia, and didn't cry when I broke my bone. And I needed about 8 weeks in crutches and with a boot, and I needed to miss a lot of opportunities and pretty much not be able to walk for a long time, be still and immobile to feel anything. And something changed there. And maybe through that stillness, maybe through the pain, later, fast forward, I was learning, asking the question when the frontal cortex was developing, when I was about 20 years old, asking the question, what am I going to be when I grow up? Because it's totally time to choose. Like, I have to choose a graduate school, and I was looking at all these different fields, like, what am I going to do? None of it felt like a fit. And I was sitting there, and this is a genius moment, on my parents' couch on our farm, and I saw a vision of me and what I would have called a patient at the time. And I was helping them. I was their guide. I was guiding them through owning their health, because nature taught me that was possible. I saw a lot of things growing up. I saw a lot of pharmaceutical commercials on the television, and I saw a lot of kids popping pills, Advil, and I saw some drugs going around, and some self-medicating. And I thought, what, our body, like, I saw the animals, I saw nature, I saw that our body knows what to do, and I just really vehemently knew that. And I saw that I was going to be a guide, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I committed to chiropractic college, and I said that's going to be my springboard into what I really end up doing. And right around the beginning of chiropractic college is cue the initiation, right? Have you ever committed to something and then got the challenge right after and thought, whoa, like, this now feels impossible? I got very sick. I had an autoimmune disease of my thyroid, where it works like not enough and too much at the same time. I had horrible digestive problems. I couldn't eat anything without an allergic response. And I had cystic acne, really bad, painful cystic acne all over my face, and adrenal fatigue. I could barely get through a day. So I thought, cool, like, I'm supposed to be a guide for people's health, and I'm doing all the right things that I think are healthy, and yet I'm falling apart. Shortly after that, I was diagnosed with cancer. When I was, let's say I was like 25 when that happened. And all of these things were happening to me is what it felt like. And my body just felt like it wasn't working. Right around that time is when I found network care, which is what Brian and I both used to practice. And that really helped me in my wholeness journey, helped me a lot. I finally had enough energy for my body to work. I really got moving on my healing. Things just magically started to change without so much effort. And then in 2016, something happened where I chose myself. Long story short, it involved a breakup and a move across the country and giving up a job and waiting tables with a doctorate in my hometown of Missouri. And that's right about when Brian and I met up.
Yes, that was our collision of beautiful soul sources. So I was born in 1968, and I had some pretty amazing experiences and basically a life of a string of teachers. And so retrospectively, it's obvious that at some point I would teach. So in 1975, I received Reiki 1 from Takata, who had just come over from Japan via Hawaii to the West Coast. I was born in Silicon Valley, before it was Silicon Valley, when apples were literally fruit that were on a tree and not computers that we're watching right now. And I was probably one of the first people, the first probably several hundred people to receive Reiki in the world from Takata when I was 6 years old. So that was my first teaching. And then I had Dr. Suzuki give me private lessons in Japan, cello lessons, if you've heard of the Suzuki method, pretty much a year later. When I was 9, I decided I was going to be a chiropractor. Right when I was watching that Bugs Bunny clip was right around the time period that I was like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And fast forward, and there's a little missing piece there in between, and that represents kind of the missing time period that was really hard for me. Basically, from probably like 12 years old till my late 20s, I had a lot of challenges, a lot of physical body challenges. I couldn't eat until like 1 o'clock. Anything that I ate before 1, I would just throw up. I was a little bit of a social recluse. My first year in high school, I ate lunch alone every single day for an entire year, spoke to pretty much nobody my first year in high school. And then I found, and I was depressed. It was fortunately back in the days when they didn't have diagnoses for like ADD, ADHD, depression, all those things. I probably would have been diagnosed and medicated. And what I found was that I could be my own MD. And so I learned to self-medicate through alcohol and drugs in my pretty much teenage all the way through my late 20s. And in fact, in 1992, I was with a friend in Baraboo, Wisconsin. I was in chiropractic college, and I was really drunk and high, and I drove a rental car 60 miles an hour off a road and crashed it and spent a night in jail. And then I actually, still with all of those problems, graduated with high honors in 1995. And in 1997, with a chiropractic degree and still a whole hot mess of problems, I found Donnie Epstein and Network. And that was really the beginning of my healing journey, from that kind of like needing to use chemicals to support my experience. And through care and learning it and eventually teaching it, I not only really transformed myself, but I was able to really work with a whole lot of people during that time period, to the point where I was one of the lead teachers. I was asked to work with Tony Robbins in 2009, and for about 8 years, I would go and work with Tony Robbins at his programs, at his home, flew on his plane, did all kinds of things. And in 2015, another major teacher was Malidoma Somé. He is the person who brought a lot of the concepts that were the initial formations and beginnings and origins of genius, of our definition of genius and our understanding of the elements into form. And through Malidoma and through a ritual that I did, I all along had this notion that I'd been sexually abused. Like, there was no real reason for me to have kind of the chemical tendencies that I did. And I had always had these hints and allegations that something had happened. And during a ceremony, I like have so much gratitude for Malidoma. Yeah. I re-experienced sexual abuse probably within my first 2 years of life. And it suddenly made a whole lot of things make sense. And it also made me realize that, you know, I'd been receiving network, which was amazing and beautiful and is to this day. And it still hadn't uncovered this one thing about my history and one connection, one indigenous ritual. And all of a sudden I had pure connection and awareness to this thing, which also began, and here's those missing years where I became my own medical doctor, prescribing my own cocktails. That was the beginning of me starting to download in the morning at 3 a.m. all these things about how the elements and the spine and the nerve system were all connected. That was the retreat that I went to, where I realized that I had the sexual abuse as an infant. I left teaching network in 2017. And by the way, 2017 was when Chelsea Rae came to the practice. And I had my son Maxwell was born in 2017. And it was when I started to realize that there were these connections between the Dagara, their cosmology, and what I knew and had learned from my time, my 20-year time in network spinal analysis. So that brings you up to date. From 2017 forward, Chelsea Rae and I started to collaborate with this information that I started to download. And it was really kind of retrospectively that we realized, like, the way that her system, the way her elemental code operates and the way mine operates is this perfect symbiosis where she is like a crystal that kind of can hold and channel energy and information. And I'm a great decipherer of that energy and information. And so we started to kind of like crack these codes. So,
and sometimes when you meet certain souls, when you come in combination with certain people, magic starts to be birthed.
Yes.
And there's something about the sum of connecting with the right people that can birth something that's way beyond the two of you, the sum of the parts, right? And that's what really into helping other people find too.
Yeah.
It's the right people.
And if you look at the word genius, Gen means birth, beginnings, origins of. And then there's an I and there's an us. And that's the way that we see genius, is it's the birth of the connection between the individual, the I, and the us, the collective, which is what happened with us. And that's where genius is truly birthed. It's in this connection between people and something beyond where this real genius emerges. And so at 3 a.m, I would wake up and have this realization that Donnie Epstein's triad of change, which was this way of looking at human beings, that each human being had an operating system. And that operating system was composed of 3 different modes. There's perception, so how you see reality, how you experience reality; behavior, how you act and interact in that reality; and structure, how you organize physical things in that reality. And there's an order. So someone could have a triad that was perception, behavior, structure, or structure, behavior, perception, or behavior, structure, perception. And basically the order would dictate how your nerve system operated. And when it was in order, you would be operating at your most efficient, most organized, most aligned way. And it's this brilliant application that was a concept, and then he turned that concept and theory into reality as we started to work with spines and nerve systems and see that when you would wiggle your fingers on the spine, that behaviors would happen for the behavior people. when you would hold a contact really lightly with a lot of spaciousness, that perception would start to open up and breath would open up. And when you would make these little punctuated, accentuated contacts to the spine, that the person's spine would start to make these little tiny structural movements. And at the same time, I was learning about and studying the work of Malidoma Patrice Somé. He's written several books. One of them's The Healing Wisdom of Africa. And in that book, he was the originator of reclaiming that word genius, which was the origins to what it is that we're working with now. And so Malidoma and the Dagara look at a cosmology that includes 5 elements. There's earth, there's water, there's fire, there's mineral, and there's nature. And what I saw was that there was an overlay of this Dagara cosmology and the triad. So what I found was that people who were born, and we're going to look at this in just a moment, people who were born in what they would call an earth year, they would have structure as their first mode in the triad. People who were born in a water year had behavior as their first mode in the triad. And people who had nature in their first year had perception. And later I'd find that air was more of a connector with that perception. But those 3 elements and that recognition that the Dagara said, people born in a particular year have a particular element that they're associated with. And that element is their tribe. And that tribe has a certain cultural responsibility that they are to bring to humanity. And I started to see that network spinal analysis and the triad of change had a connection with the Dagara cosmology. And I was just like, what the f-? And we'll tell you what that F stands for in just a moment here. So, your problem is you think that your problem is the problem. And the reality is that your problem is the solution. SOUL-ution. Your problem, your challenge, your diagnosis, your disease, your symptom, whatever it is that you look at in your life and you think that's your problem, contained in the energy of that quote-unquote problem literally is the answer to what it is that you're looking for, you're dreaming for, what your desires contain. Everything that you want in life is contained in the problem. And the moment that we realize that, and the moment that we stop looking for someone or ourselves to fix our problems, we're liberated and we're on the path to genius. So, exploring the 5 elements of the Dagara cosmology.
In a minute, I'm gonna read this in a moment, and I want to mention. So what do you do with your problems? Do you just sit there with your problems and do nothing? No.
Thank God.
We be with creation. We be with it, and hang with us here, and we're going to talk more about this. The ingredients of creation are the 5 elements, and indigenous communities like Science Today looked to the world around them to learn from. Indigenous knowledge evolved from the observation of and participation with the natural world. Natural forces are reliable teachers of the way it is. According to Michael Mead, indigenous cosmologies worldwide have 5, not 4, common elements: fire, earth, mineral, which are stones, bones, metal, and crystals, water, and a 5th element. The 5th element is always one representative of change or the transformative principle: air, ether, or as the Dagara in West Africa name it, nature.
And so when I saw this, I was completely liberated, because I was looking at Western astrology that only had 4, so earth, water, fire, and air. And then I was looking at this Dagara cosmology, and I was trying to overlay that with the triad. And I was like, well, what do we do with air? And so initially, I was given permission to recognize, well, air, ether, the Dagara call it nature, so it's the same thing. Later, I would find that it's not just the Dagara cosmology, but it's a combination of Dagara plus what the West has looked at in terms of and including air. So we have actually 6 elements that we look at that the universe is composed of.
And Malidoma says, this comes from one of his books, there are 2 things people crave: the full realization of their innate gifts and to have these gifts approved, acknowledged, and confirmed. There are countless people in the West whose efforts are sadly wasted because they have no means of expressing their unique genius. In the psyches of such people, there is an inner power and authority that fails to shine because the world around them is blind to it. The indigenous definition sees genius as an open line that flows through a person from the other world.
So from their perspective, genius is that connection to spirit. They're seeing genius as that which connects a person to spirit, divine, the other world is what they would call it. And we're looking at it as that original definition of an attendant spirit at birth. And we're saying, well, what if we could have that attendant spirit connection at birth? And what if we could keep it and connect with it every single day of our life? And contained within the seeds and brilliance and wisdom of the indigenous, we found the answers to that question. And we found that there was actually a code that's delivered to every single person, that when you land as a soul is an order of all the elements. And that elemental code is an expression and connection to you and spirit, your genius.
So the elements, like we said, are the ingredients of creation and our original ancestors. That's why people around the world have paid attention to these elements as long as there have been people.
Yes, the indigenous refer to the elements as the original ancestors.
And we're going to run through each element, how it shows up in your body. We're going to start with earth. Earth is about being at home in your physical body, feeling safe, feeling stable, and also having a sense of abundance and being resourced. Water is your ability to flow, to be spontaneous, to have movement and action and emotion, and also peace and harmony.
I'm going to take that as an opportunity to
throwing
drink
in some
water.
bonuses.
Yes.
Yeah. Fire is knowing your true identity, not who you've been told you are or who you're supposed to be or who you can't be, who you really are, who you really are. And it's normal if you're like, I'm not really sure if I know. Then you need more fire, more fire connection. Mineral are the storytellers, meaning in everything and remembering who you really are. Air is a sense of spaciousness, timelessness, and your vision. And nature, we could not find one photo to give an example of change. So this is the same scene in 4 seasons. So you can, to demonstrate change. Nature is the magic of transformation and your ability to be situationally responsive. So what does that mean? It's like in any given situation, in its uniqueness, in that unique moment, you know what to do. You can create order from chaos, and you can create chaos from order when it's necessary. When that order sucks at this point, you need to know how to create some chaos. And the nature person is the magician, the wizard, the witch.
So all of these qualities are qualities of each element, and everyone has an elemental order.
And everyone has each element. Obviously, if you're here, you have every element.
So we've talked a lot about the genius, and here it is. Welcome to Genius Frequency. This is the official unveiling of the name, and we're going to describe exactly what it is. The genius frequency is each person's unique connection to spirit expressed through the human body as a harmonic vibrational tone, sonic and photonic, sound and light. The spine, nerve, fascial, and energetic systems are all aligned through an individual's elemental code, which is determined at the time of one's birth. Alignment of one's elemental code is what allows for the full transmission and expression of one's genius frequency. So, we are going to take this time and opportunity to show you what the elements look like when they're expressing in the human body. So we're gonna first do a little bit of a technology shift here and change our camera, and then we're gonna bring someone on and we're gonna work with their spine nerve system with the genius frequency and show you what each element looks like. So stay with us.
So get excited. All right, y'all, thanks for hanging. We have shifted so you can see the table, you can see Brian, and
ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Burke.
Hello, everyone.
We asked Matt to come in here because he has a really nice alignment of elements, and I'm going to be working with Matt and kind of describing as we go. And thanks for being here. You're welcome. Okay, my pleasure. Okay, great. Go ahead and drop those guys down if that works. There we go. Sorry. Okay, cool. So I'm going to swing around here. So I'm making a gentle touch contact at his tailbone and cervical spine. And basically the first thing that we're looking for is essentially his body to go into relaxation. And you're seeing this kind of flowy movement essentially because Matt's first element is water. And so in order for his body to find ease and breath and relaxation, he's going to utilize his first element to connect with that. And that first element's going to support the lowest part of his brain, his reptilian brain, to shift from a more fight-flight state, if it's there, or a stress state of any kind, and go into relaxation with breath. And so you can see kind of this really kind of like natural and like gentle, expansive movement, and that's happening from the breath. And you'll see me checking tension down here, and this is looking at tension through the nerve system, and it'll literally tell me also what element is expressing so that I can be in support of meeting and matching. So one of the really important concepts that we're looking at with the genius frequency is being with what is. So what is what is. So in the genius frequency, we never argue with the nature of reality. We're just, if this is what is, then this is what is. So instead of trying to change something, we're going to find where is the system at, what element is it in, and then we're going to help him be in his element. And what we find is that when a system goes into trauma, it will scramble the elements. And so we want to help the system unscramble it, and then it will still start to line it up. So the first element that I worked with in his system was earth. And so we just helped his system reorientate, and now we're actually getting the water element coming online. So I'm going to add a little bit of a water contact here. And there's this real gentle rocking, if you can see. I don't know if the camera's picking it up through here, but then it's actually going to start to express water through his whole system. So he'll get like a watery movement happening through his whole system, and that has changed that. Cool. And then we're going to go back, and I'm going to do this. And so now his system's going from just going in from breath, but it's starting to get more energy with that. And he's actually starting to move from water, which I'm going to add, and then into a second element, which is mineral. And you'll see his body will actually get more large movement posture. So mineral is almost like yoga for the body. The body starts to move in these angular, large positionings. And so his system is actually using now water and his second element, mineral, to start to create more alignment of that code. And we'll go back and check here. Okay. Let this bend here for a sec. Cool. And then turn your head to the right and left. Okay, good. And so after he went through the alignment of water into mineral, now his system's moving into fire. And there's kind of a different path that his body's going on. And this is actually really cool because we're going to get to see something that's a little bit more unique here. So now I'm actually in the energetic body, which is how fire responds, and I can go in water, and then where mineral is, and his body is basically responding to different parts of the energy body, which is how fire operates. It's the energy outside the body, and it's also the energy inside the body. And so he was actually starting to line up 4 elements with that last series of contacts that I made. And because I'm working with the fire element, I'm actually making the contacts in the energy body. So it's really fascinating. Depending upon where a person's fire element is, if it's early on, their bodies will be much more responsive to contacts in the actual energy body. If it's later, they won't be quite as responsive, and many people won't show up with their energy bodies really opening up until they get further down their code, if fire's like their 4th or 5th element. So, beautiful. I'm going to have you go on, let's see, let me check one more thing here. Okay, cool. I'm going to have you go on your back with your head down here. Knees up. Yeah. And so, with water being his first element, one of the ways that we can support his body aligning with each of these elements is we can work with what we call body connection exploration. And this initially emerged from somatorespiratory integration. And we started to see that basically the elements and how somatorespiratory integration were lining up were very similar. However, there were many things that changed along the way that allowed us to see that actually there's a much more organic process happening where we would allow the body to actually guide, and we didn't have to really tell anyone that they had to do anything. We would just observe the body and allow it to unfold each element specific to where they were at in their code. So one of the things that's happening right now is there's breath that's happening here. So I'm just going to have him place one hand right here and just allow the breath, allow sensation. So you don't have to do anything. Let your body guide you. You're just going to place your hand there. And what will happen is his body will start to guide him as to another place where that's actually connected. And so we're actually going to have you do the heel of your hand here at your pubic bone. And that's the earth position, and this is the water position. And you don't have to do anything other than just allow that to happen. Allow the breath, allow the sensation, allow the energy. And his body will start to integrate more of that. Good. And then we're going to bring this right up to here. So the throat is actually connecting, which is the air element. And so now he's actually connecting in water with 2 positions that allow him to integrate water and air together. And what's beautiful is he literally doesn't have to do anything. His body is taking him through this whole process naturally. And we just allow that to integrate. Good. And then straighten your legs and then straighten your arms above here. And just allow the breath, the sensation, the energy. Yep. And then he's actually going through a mineral, which is called realization, where his body is literally having almost like a spiraling through the central channel, through the spinal cord and the central channel that runs from the crown to the perineum. And when this mineral element goes into realization, it's quite often that people afterwards have an awareness of something that they didn't know before. It's like all these different points that were disconnected come together like a mineral, all the different facets. And there's this awareness of like, oh my God, I had no idea that this was connected to this past trauma. And now this is actually happening in my life right now. And that's why I was traumatized. And now I understand I needed that moment to actually be the initiation for this moment that's happening for me right now. Good. Good. And then just let your arms relax. Good. So that was water and a little bit of mineral and some fire in there. Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. And then we're going to have another demonstration here in just a moment. Dr. Chelsea Rae is going to do that one.
Hello. So next we're going to have Megan come on over with me. And we like to show you different people. You can have a seat right here. We like to show you different people's bodies because everybody looks different on the table. So we're going to demonstrate some different elements that Megan's body has in spades. So go ahead and go face down and we'll get started. Awesome. And Brian called me Dr. Chelsea Rae. That's true. And like, if you're working with us, you don't have to call us that. It's just Chelsea Rae and Brian. Yeah. Go ahead and look this way. Center. And then this way. Beautiful. And center. Okay. Amazing. Okay. We're going to start up here at your neck. And Brian is a lot better at talking while he's working. So Brian, if you want to say anything about what I'm doing, you're welcome to, but you don't have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're doing a nature frequency here.
So nature is many times like nothing, 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 everything.
Yeah.
And nature kind of looks like if you took all the elements, earth, water, fire, mineral, air, and you put them in a blender and put it on high, and you would start to get the whole system to kind of start to open, expand, almost explode. And so you can see your whole spine's elongating. And it actually starts to connect from the perineum. Nature opens up from the perineum all the way to the crown and all the way through the whole side body. So it's like this expansive, explosive connection to everything. And with nature being her first element, which is mine, she actually finds physiological ease through this expansion and explosion. So it's a much different first element. As we saw with Matt, with water, water's more subtle in terms of how it acts and interacts, but both of them create this sense of physiological ease.
Thanks. Beautiful.
And you can see kind of those like almost earthquakes. That's the energy of mineral, which is her second element, right? And so she's actually moving from, once an element, one of the things that we're looking at is the saturation, the full expression of an element in the body. And once that full saturation of that first element happens, then we'll usually see the second element come online. Unless we're kind of decoding or unscrambling the system, then we'll see another element show up.
So this is a mineral frequency that we're working with here, and I'm at your tailbone here. There we go. There we go.
And so she's moving from that nature, which is that big expansion, into some of those more postural movements, as we describe, almost like yogic movements where the arms will like position or posture. You can see her arms are starting to move on the table, and it's almost like your body is looking to become the expression, like a snowflake has a certain architecture, which is a combination of the energy and the water contained, and so therefore it creates a certain architecture to hold that specific frequency. Mineral is going to move into a position or posture to hold that more complex frequency.
So her body's moving her posture to find the energy and change it into something useful for her.
Yeah. And once you get the second element online, then you're starting to activate above and beyond the reptilian brain. You're including it, but you're starting to move into the emotional brain. And so that's where you can hear with her breath, there's like a that's happening, because the breath is actually, the sound with the breath is allowing emotional connection, amplification, and discharge as well.
Okay. Beautiful. Flip to your back. Okay. Okay. And now we're just going to observe your body before we dive into anything. So go ahead and have your hands at your side there. We're just going to observe. Notice your breath. Notice your sensations. What are you noticing to start?
I feel more openness through my chest than when we started, especially, and feeling like very new sensations kind of near my tailbone and sacrum.
Good. Awesome. Go ahead and straighten your legs. Good. And bring them together. You can rest, like that. That's it. Okay. Bring your hands to palms touching, and then nestle them like in there. And in your collarbones a little deeper. Everybody's body kind of fits inside itself differently. So you gotta find that. Yeah. See how you can touch your collarbone area, and see if your body breathes more or breathes less when we do that. Great. And then kind of lift your elbows and go a little deep inside your body. Like, go ahead and allow some depth and see how does your body respond to that. Good. Okay. And notice the spiral that's starting to happen, like the swaying. Which way is the spiral going?
This way.
Good. Yep. And we're going as fast as your breath. you want. Beautiful. So what's happening is her body's processing a lot of emotion through big movements. And this is all integrating and dispersing through her fascia, through her connective tissue. You can see head to toe, this is moving. Yeah, and this is the mineral element. This is her second element, so this is how her body moves emotion. And we're moving emotion through the mineral frequency, actually relative to air into earth. So this is getting a little complex, but this is going to help her actually transcend time more often and feel a real sense of like safety and connection and trust in her path. Yeah. The best anti-anxiety I've ever seen. Okay. How you doing?
Great.
Yeah. What are you noticing?
I just feel so much lighter, you know? And I feel the subtle sensations in my system so much more.
Amazing. We're going to transition in a moment, and I want to let everyone know that there are, like we said, there are 6 elements that we're working with, and there are multiple body connection explorations for each element. We showed you 2.5 today. So this is a taste based on who's here. So thank you Megan, thank you Matt.
So Carl Jung, thanks for breathing with us. We are born at a given moment, in a given place, and like vintage years of wine, we have the qualities of the year and of the season which we are born. Astrology does not lay claim to anything more. He knew a thing or two. So we talked about the Dagara cosmology, and what we didn't really talk about, and we will in just a moment, is the specific year. And we're going to, at the very end of our presentation here, give you the Dagara year and what element it is so that you can know your first element. Beyond that, we actually utilize astrology, believe it or not. I would have never thought in a million gazillion years that I would be utilizing astrology as a means to support someone in their life relative to their body, their nerve system. I would have never guessed it. And yet it was in the wee hours of the night between 3 and 4 in the morning where I would get these little mini downloads, and they would be these spiritual breadcrumbs. And first it was the Dagara equals the triad. And then we started talking about it, and we were like, oh my God, there's all these elements. What if there's like this alignment of elements? And then I would get the hit that it was actually part of astrology. And so we'd start to look, and we already knew what people's triad, the behavior, perception. And so we saw the linkage of the Dagara when they were born. And then we knew already what their second mode was in the triad. And so we started to search astrology to find out what it was. And we're not going to give it away this time. You got to stick around with us longer than that. But we found that there were a few pieces of very important astrology that basically said your code. And so destiny, when you're born, decoded. So when you're born matters, and it also energies. Get it? And a little bit more on that physics joke. Matter plus energy equals creation. So basically there's 2 ingredients in all of creation. There's matter and there's energy. And basically matter is condensed energy. So everything's essentially energy. And then the quantum physicists will say, well, actually everything's space. And from space emerges waves. And when 2 waves get together, they form a point which becomes a particle. And then it's the energy that creates the waves, that creates the 2 waves coming together to form the particle. And then when particles get together, they form a crystal, which is basically, now we're looking at space equals air, matter is the particle, which is earth. We're looking at the waves as water. We have all of it put together as nature. We have the energy as fire. And then the crystal is basically the mineral. So we have quantum physics and indigenous coming together brilliantly, beautifully, to basically help us understand that we're all made of the elements and that there is an organization and an order. And once you start to unscramble that order and your body naturally lines up, you're going to start to be able to more consistently tune into your genius frequency, which is your connection to spirit. So matter plus energy equals creation. When you align with your destiny, you gain access to your free will. So once you line up with your elemental code, that's your destiny. Then you get free will. If you're trying to get free will without alignment, life is really, really hard. And my sense is that we've all had that experience.
And what that experience might look like is like when you know the things you want to do, need to do, must do. This is just one example. But like you can't do them. Like you can't actually do them. You know the things you want to be doing, you desire to be doing, but like they're literally not happening. Probably because your system is out of order and your system you don't have the safety, the connection that you need, the energy that you need to do it. Because if you did, then you would.
So once you do, then destiny calls and your genius comes online. Your elemental code. So each element has a particular function, and it also has almost like a personality. So your first element we call the indigenous element. Indigenous simply because we're honoring that it came from indigenous wisdom, the Dagara, and because indigenous cultures view life and reality very differently than modern cultures. In modern culture, we see so much scarcity, whereas the indigenous looks at everything as being perfect, and the unfolding, even in tragedy, they look at and see that there is a perfection in this. We just can't understand this quite yet. And so they're not rushing to try and figure out answers. They're letting the answers unfold naturally. They're letting everything unfold naturally. They're into organic and have always been. Everything that they do, think, and experience from true indigenous wisdom is expressed as an organic, natural unfolding because they're living in alignment with their ancestors. They're living in alignment with the earth. They're living in alignment with the natural world, plants, animals. They're living in alignment with themselves. So we call the first element the indigenous.
And what it does for the body. Do we want to talk about that?
We're going to talk about that in just a moment. We've got a slide for it.
Great.
Yep. So the second element, we get so excited. So the second element is the achievement element. And the achievement element is essentially the element that allows you to, once you're relaxed, once you're safe and your physiology is turned on, then you can start to take action and achieve things, get things done. Your third element is your soul path. And the soul path is your reason for being on this planet. There's a particular astrological happening that happened when you were born, and basically it is linked to an element, and that element is your purpose. And when you embody this as your third element, basically the part of your brain that creates your mental focus is essentially aligned with your reason for being. So it's a brilliant unfolding of your mind, and its only job is to focus on your reason for being here on the planet. It's really all it needs to focus on. Your fourth element is your legacy, which is basically once you're relaxed, you're taking action, and that action is towards your purpose. And over time, your legacy emerges, and that element supports you beyond this life to create something that's worth of high value for everyone who's left to engage with, to be with, to participate in. Your fifth element is your multidimensional. That's right, folks. You are more than this reality. You're more than this planet. You're more than this life. And when you start to connect with your fifth element, you start to bring in aspects of other realities, other lifetimes into this one. And when that happens, holy shit, your genius really comes online. Things that you learned in other reality, all of a sudden, boom, it's right here. You didn't have to take a course on it. You didn't have to scroll the internet for it. It's just with you. You embody it. I mean, if you're going to live a bunch of lifetimes, why not have them happening in your body here now? And then the sixth element is galactic. We have been shown that once enough people on the planet align with their elemental code and they're aware that they're more than just this reality, that we start to remember our connection to our star family. We start to remember that connection, and our senses that the planet will be safe enough and peaceful enough that people beyond this planet are going to want to engage with us, because we're not acting like a bunch of 5-year-olds in a sandbox trying to throw sandy poo at each other, as many of us currently are, not necessarily in this group, but obviously you know what's what on the planet now. Yeah. So these human technology upgrades, it's all about alignment, and it's basically allowing the alignment that is your destiny to reside embodied in you.
They're not always meaningful.
Yeah, it's meaningful.
Meaningful how?
That's what I want you to find out.
About your life?
Yeah, about my life and about the whole thing, about the universe, you know? Big one. I mean, should I keep doing what I'm doing? Is it hopeless?
Mr. Markovsky, we see a lot of people in here who claim they want to know the ultimate truth about reality. They want to peer under the surface at the big everything. But this can be a very painful process full of surprises. It can dismantle the world as you know it. That's why most people prefer to remain on the surface of things. Maybe you should go home. Let sleeping dogs lie. Take it easy. What do you say?
I say don't give me the brush off. Please. I want to know. This is big.
Have you ever transcended space and time?
Yes. No. Time, not space. No, I don't know what you're talking about.
We love this clip because it was made for genius frequency. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in order to connect with your multidimensional, you're going to have to transcend some time and space.
Yes. So what just happened? What are we doing? What are the spots that we touched? We touched places on the body that are called portals, and that's what we're developing. And they are how we move the elemental energy through our body. And where you will find this in physics is it's called an Einstein-Rosen bridge, or a wormhole. And it's a hypothetical topological feature. This is funny. That would fundamentally be a shortcut connecting two separate points in space-time that could connect extremely far distances, such as 1 billion light years or more, short distances, such as a few feet, different universes, and in theory, different points in time.
Yeah. So these elemental portals, or wormholes, as they're describing here in quantum physics, are basically the means through which you can experience and express the element. And when all these portals start to line up and they start to organize and they start to sync your elemental code up, then you are able to go back in time through the files of any traumas that you've had and start to reorientate them and discharge the energy that's been stored in protection. That energy goes to start to open up the higher brain centers, and you start to become aware of like, oh, that's why that happened. And not only that, you start to connect into the future and remember things from your future and other realities that inform who you're becoming right now. Creating your elemental portals. So as Chelsea Ray said, it's an access point that allows your body to express each element.
So why do these elements matter? The indigenous achievement, what are we talking about? So we're going to tell you when the indigenous element is energized and connected. So for Matt, it was the water element. For Megan, it was the nature element. What happens in the body? Basically, the reptilian brain governs this part of the system. And fight, flight, freeze, and fawn all shift to rest, reset, recover, relax. This is where your body remembers to work, to just function and be at ease and be calm and be at home in your own body.
And most people in trauma don't even have this first element on. So they will start from their second element or even deeper down their elemental code and basically be taking action or trying to create their legacy, which a lot of people we find, especially a lot of like entrepreneurs, are operating from their legacy, trying and working hard and feeling lots of resistance and friction in life simply because they don't have that first element on board. And once that happens, then the actions that we take become completely different. And we might even create a different business and different reason for why we're doing business, or a different relationship, or, pretty much anything and everything is up for question if you've created a life based on having to achieve without having that physiological ease in your system. So the first element becomes so imperative.
Yes. And the second element is achievement. And we also call this emotional activation. Because when this is energized, you have decreased overwhelm and increased bandwidth, so you can be with the same amount of stuff and more and be okay with it. Less thinking, more feeling, sensing, and knowing. You have the increased capacity for feeling, which translates to aligned action down the road. You have an increase in desire and ability to make the changes, and that's what's huge. If you want change in your life, you have to have the safety, the desire, and the ability all line up. You have muscle tension changes and also immune, digestive, and hormonal functions. This one was a game changer for me. Yeah.
And then you have the third element, which is the soul path, your purposeful direction. With this, we're activating the cortical brain, so you know the right and left hemispheres. It's revealing your truest self, your focus, your clarity, your determination. It helps you climb the mountain you're here to climb, and instead of it feeling like a grueling task, it's like an enlightening adventure. Your body is your decision guide. So once this third element kicks in, of course, with the other two in front of it, you start to really relax into, I can easily climb this mountain. In fact, it's going to be fun.
And the fourth element is your legacy, your life's creation. So what is the party that you have at the top of the mountain, and what does everyone remember and take pictures of?
Yeah.
Your life's creation is what is left
Not
behind.
Not just selfies.
Yeah, what is left behind when you consistently embody and live your soul's path.
The fifth element opens up your prefrontal cortex, allows the multidimensional connections, which is downloading all your credits. And what I mean by that is, imagine you're at a university and it was full in certain classes, so you had to go to other community colleges around town to pick up some credits. Well, that's only good if the credits transfer. So in the same way, if you've had other lives, other realities going on, whether they're simultaneous or in other time periods, you're able to start to transfer those credits into this reality, which allows a quickening of your consciousness. It allows a quickening of you being able to make manifest why you're on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And the sixth element, governed by the pineal gland in the brain, is the galactic element. And that's where we remember our star family.
Yeah, that we are more than just here.
That we are more than just here.
So as we mentioned about trauma earlier, it scrambles your code. It makes it really hard to access things, or you only have certain parts of your awareness, consciousness, brain, body, online. And your life feels scrambled in a certain way.
And I will really say, like, just as a product of living in this world, like most people who we work with for the first time, their code is scrambled.
Yep.
They are not operating out of in their element and in their order. And so if you're wanting to like do your life's work right now, if you want to launch a big thing, or you've already launched, like you're doing it and you feel like a mess, like we did too. And that's what we shared with you. And that's okay. It requires all of you, and being in your element makes all of you accessible.
Mm-hmm. Here's a little gift we'd love to leave you with. What is your first element? Super easy. You want to take them there?
Yeah. So, the year you were born, right? So for me, 1989, for Brian, 68. The last number in your birth year. So the Dagara know that each year is associated with an element, and it's based on the number that it ends with. So right now, 2022, we're in a fire year.
Yes.
So
it's intense. It's hot.
Yeah. So what you're looking at in this slide is the number that your birth year ends with. That tells you your element. So if you're born in 1990 or 1965, you're an earth element.
If you're born in 81 or 1776, you're a water year, and one of you is probably dead.
Yeah. And if you were born in 83 or 78, you're a nature year.
Go nature. And if you're born in 1974 or 2009, you're a mineral year.
Yes.
Your tribe.
And if you're born in 1982 or 1997, you're a fire year.
Yes. So those are all the years. What do you do with it? Well, it's very simple. Allow the element to support your physiology. If you're a water year, get in water, take baths, take showers. If you're an earth year, lay on the earth, literally lay your body on the ground. If you're a mineral year, get some crystals or stones, bones to be with, in your house or on your body. If you're a fire year, campfires, candles. If you're a nature year, just immerse yourself in nature, in the plants, the animals. It's as simple as that. It's taking time to do human things and doing human things with any of these elements that are of your year will bring your physiology into a remembering of the year that you were born and how that element supported your reptilian brain to develop. And that element is what will give your physiology a sense of safety, a sense of ease, a sense of breath, a sense of home.
Yeah. So start communing with your element and let life be your teacher. Allow this to be a non-cognitive experience and just experience it. Find out who you are in that way.
Yes. So here's a little bit about each of the elements. Mineral's the way shower. Nature's the magician. Water's the peacemaker. Fire's spirit in everything. You see spirit everywhere. And earth is your physical body as home. You are a living, breathing home for people to saddle up against, with, on.
Earth people you feel really safe.
Yeah, I always just want to cuddle up against earth people. Yep.
Very trustable.
Yes.
So those are some archetypes that those years embody. And if you would like these operating system upgrades, we would love for you to work with us. Some ways, there are 2 ways you can do that right now. Our world is really expanding, and right now it is one of 2 ways. So you can book your first session or your next session if you already come in for sessions at the Sanctuary, and that's our private practice in Asheville, North Carolina. It's been operating as Nourish and Flourish for the last 11 or 12 years. And now we're in the middle of a brand shift, and our name soon will be Genius Frequency.
Yes.
So the other way you can work with us and is the Genius Generation. This is a mentorship and coaching program, and we have 4 seasonal immersions.
And this is a much deeper dive. It's a much higher price point. It's a bigger commitment. It's for those who really, really, really want to take it to the next level. Yes. Either way, if you're interested, you can either call or text at 828-255-2770, or you can email frontdesk at geniusfrequency.com.
And I know right now we're local in Asheville, and I want you to know that people fly in regularly. At least multiple people per month fly in and drive in to see us from out of town. So it's okay if you don't live in Asheville.
Yep.
Yeah, right now we're the only people doing this work. In the future, that's going to change, and we're going to grow, and we're going to have a multitude of offerings that we see. And right now we're just doing what we do best.
Yes. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. If you are watching the replay of this, thank you for watching. We're so excited to have you on board. Yeah. We're so appreciative of you being here with us, whether it's right now or at some future point. We love you very much, and
we really would love for you to be living your genius more. We love seeing people thrive. We have actually a 16-page document that we are not even going to show you tonight, full of testimonials, and nothing makes us feel more fulfilled than like seeing not just ourselves but our clients like absolutely flourishing. So please take us up on it.
Yeah, join us.
And enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much for being here with us. We absolutely love you.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Good night, y'all.